Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be upgrading the cabin. We're going to go ahead and put in a 24 volt solar setup, and specifically I have an MPP LV2424 made by MPP Solar. I will put it down in the video description for those of you who may be interested. This one with the green cover is a hybrid. It is set up so that if I want to expand my solar and go to, right now I'm only going to have 120 volts in the cabin, but if we would like to upgrade to 240, I can put two of these together to give us 240. I don't see that in my future, but because it didn't cost any extra money, I thought it would be a wise decision to go ahead and put this in. I will also show you how we are going to reduce this down from a 24 volt system to 12 volt system, because my cabin is all already wired in 12 volts. So we need to make accommodations for that. And you may ask me, why did you just go ahead and order a 12 volt system? Well, because a 24 volt system is far more efficient, and it's cheaper just to go ahead and buy a $30 24 volt to 12 volt reducer, and then have the extra power just in case if you want to add any extra features to your cabin. So all around, I think this is going to be the best setup for the cabin. I've been living on solar here at the cabin for almost 2 years now. We started out with a small 200 watt system. This is going to be, we have 800 watts in solar panels, and this MPP LV2424 is capable of 2,400 watts, 120 volts, and like we talked about earlier, it is a 24 volt DC setup. So can't wait to share it with you. Stick with us. I'll show you everything from setting up the solar panels all the way to the final install of this, and let you know how hard or easy it is to install. Okay, solar panels are all set up. The framework is in. I tried to make it the legs as level as I possibly can. The leg in that one corner, I had a rock there that I couldn't get around, so that's the one leg that's going to be a little bit out of level. But we're not winning any awards for this project. I just wanted to get a good sturdy foundation up just to hold the panels. The panels are extremely light, so we don't need a whole lot of strength there. The only thing that I didn't do that I will do before the snow flies is underneath these beams that go horizontally. I'm going to go ahead and put a 2x6 straight upright underneath there, and that'll add structural support for when we have a snow load, if we do get a snow load, on top of the panels. The panels, most manufacturers recommend you mount them anywhere from 30 degrees to 45 degrees. I went right at about 40 degrees, and I've got so much power that's going to be coming off these panels compared to the amount of usage that I need in the cabin. I thought that was a good compromise. It's sharp enough that it'll let the snow rush off the panels, but yet it's laid back enough that I should get some good charging from the sun. So all right, let's go behind the scenes and I'll show you how easy these panels link together. Okay, kind of a universal connector for solar is called an MC4 adapter, or a connector. And you can see there's a female end and a male end. On the male end, there's an orange O-ring that's inside there to keep any rain or moisture out of the system. And it comes with 2 locks on the male end that snap into these little grooves on the female end. So it's going to be as simple as just pushing the 2 connectors together. And then now I'll show you the panels itself. We're hooking them in series. Here is one end of the, this is the negative end of the connectors. And what you do is just simply loop positive to negative, and then positive to negative, and then positive to negative. And then on the very end, we have a leftover positive terminal. And then on that end, if you remember, I showed you the negative terminal. So we're going to take this positive and negative terminal and hook a positive and negative leads to it and run it into the cabin for the solar. And then on the back side here, you can see we cleaned it up by adding some hangers where they need to be. We want everything nice and tight. I did use some zip straps for the excess cable that we have, and then this I'll end up cutting off. I just don't have my knife out here yet. Right there. So that's what it's going to look like from the back side. It's very clean, very easy. And then, like I talked about earlier in the video, I will add some 2x6 bracing here, a board that runs all the way across to the other end to compensate for snow load. And trust me, we get a ton of snow up here, and if you don't put that cross bracing in, you will be in a world of hurt. So here's the way that I'm going to cheat. I went ahead and off camera, I didn't want to bore the socks off you. What I did is I ran 1.25" conduit. That's this gray stuff, or I don't know that that's the right terminology, conduit, but it's housing that you can run your wiring through. Anyways, and what I'm going to do to keep this weather tight here is I went ahead and, if you can see, I drilled a hole and made this valley, and I'm going to go ahead and put the wires in there, and then I'll glue that in, and then the rest of this I will, there's going to be a little gap back in there. I'll silicone that shut so that it's 100% watertight. So what I did is I've just got this strap to the 4x4. It's laying underneath the cabin. If you're new to the channel and you haven't seen my last time I wired my solar in, I put this gray stuff underground, and I'm not going to do that this time because being that it is just a temporary structure, sometimes I do have to level out the cabin, so I want this to be able to be movable. I've only got 3 feet of clearance from this 4x4 to the cabin, so I'm not worried about anybody tripping over it. And then what I will do is I will put rocks and decorative stuff over the top of it so that it's easily unburied. Now let's go around to the other side of the cabin and I'll show you where the wiring is going to be going into the cabin. Okay, and then on this side of the cabin, we pulled the wires all the way through here. And if you remember last time, I left this as an outlet where I can hook a generator up to it and charge out the system. I'm going to let that in place, and instead of the old 3/4 inch conduit, I will be taking this out and discarding this. I will no longer be using that 200 watt solar at the cabin. Instead, we only are interested in having a big solar. So I went ahead, and this is where the wires came out. And now I drilled an 1.25 inch hole in there that I'll sleeve in plastic so we don't have to worry about these getting frayed. And we'll go ahead and we'll slide this into the cabin, and then we can go ahead and start hooking up the solar. All right, guys, let's talk about what's going to power the solar system. I am simply going to start out with this one battery. This one battery is a Chins battery. It's a smart battery. It has heating pads that are on the sides of the cells, so that when it gets cooler out in the winter months, it will keep this battery from freezing. It's a lithium ion, and so with lithium ion, unlike AGM batteries, they do not work good when they get cold. This one is a 5120 watt hour life, PO4 I think is what they call it. So it's basically a 25.6 volt battery, and it has I think they say 200 amp hours on it. But this battery here is the equivalent to 8 100 amp hour AGM batteries. Can you believe it? So there's a ton of power that's stacked up in this battery. So this is a battery that I chose to go ahead and use for the setup. So all right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off this front cover plate. It has 2 screws on the bottom, 1 in each bottom corner. And when we undo those screws, the whole cover plate comes off, and we'll make everything accessible that we want to work with. Now, the manufacturer claims that this is supposed to be one of the quickest solar setups to install, so we're going to really put them to the test here. Couple wires that I have hanging here. I'll explain this first. The whole cabin is plumbed in 12 volt DC, and that's what these 2 wires are here. These 2 wires are the solar panels that we have outside, and we're going to be careful not to touch those together. And matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and put a wire nut on the ends of these, and this is going to probably be the most important thing I can tell you in the whole setup. Do not connect these 2 wires from your solar panel array until the very last part of the process, when the battery is already all connected and the power has somewhere to go. Here we go. This box that you're looking up here is my breaker box if I was on conventional electricity, but because we decided to stay with all solar and we want to be off the grid, we are no longer using that. So it is just going to be used as a junction box where we can store all of our extra wires and all that good stuff, and it can be hidden in the wall. So since we have that there as kind of an eyesore, we do have a cover that goes over it. We've decided that we're going to go ahead and install the MPP Solar Box right over the face of it. They're about the same dimensions, so nobody will ever know that hole's in the back of the wall except for us, and it happens to be a really handy spot to have everything come out in one spot. So we're going to go ahead and start by mounting this to the wall, and once I get it mounted to the wall and leveled off, then I'll show you the next step. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and start connecting the battery first of all to the solar setup. Once we have the panel off, it's pretty clearly marked. There's a spot off to the right hand side. That's his battery, and it is marked on the bottom here. It says positive and negative. So I'm going to start with hooking up the negative first. The other end is already connected to the battery. And we're going to go ahead and just tighten that, just snug it up. I'm not going to go much harder than that. And then what I have to protect the whole system is I have a 150 amp fuse that came in the all-in-one kit. I've got a positive lead already connected to the battery, and it's live up to this point here. And so what we need to do is we're going to connect it to, well, I'll do the top first since I already have this socket on. And just make sure you don't touch any metal to metal in here once you do this process, because you'll light up like a Christmas tree. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and touch the fuse block. This is the part that scares the heck out of everybody, because when you do it, there's always a spark that takes place. And if you're not prepared for it, you'll be shocked just seeing it spark, and it'll kind of freak you out. It's not going to hurt you. Just make sure that you're touching all rubber or plastic, not that you're touching anything else, because yeah, you don't want to get zapped if you are. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all loosened up and prepared. That's ready. Now let's go make our sparks. Okay, so that's all it's going to be. It's going to be that little spark at first. Doesn't seem like much, but it scares the hell out of a lot of people. I have seen some people go ahead, and what they'll do is they'll take a pencil, like a carpenter's pencil, and they'll sharpen both ends, and they'll touch the two leads to the lead of the pencil, and it kind of puts a dimple on the pencil, but it doesn't hurt anything else. So okay, so I almost made a deadly mistake. This is going to be our 24 volts to 12 volt converter, and I almost wired it into the section over here, and then when I went underneath and I read it's clearly marked, that would have been my mistake, that these are for AC only. So what I did for the DC is I went ahead and I hooked up one wire to my negative up here, and then the other wire I went down to the fuse block here and I wired it into there. Now keep in mind, this isn't the only protection that I have for my DC wiring. I do have breakers also behind my utility panel inside the kitchen, where everything has its own little fuse. So I just wanted to make sure I'm 100% protected so that I don't have to worry about any fires or anything. So then what are these two ports for here? These are the last two ports that you have. It's for AC in and AC out. The AC in is simply where you can plug in an extension cord, and I'll do it. I've seen a couple guys do it where you cut off the end of an extension cord, you wire it into there, and then that'll be the input would be for if you wanted to hook up your gas powered generator. It has a battery charger right within the unit here, and it'll charge your 24 volt battery for you. And then the output gets connected to your 120 volt outlets that are inside the cabin. Pretty simple setup once you start to think about it a little bit. Okay, so I cut the end of the extension cord off, and then went ahead and wired the other end into the back terminal, which is the AC output. Now I can plug this into my block that I have that powers all my outlets, and everything in the house will be live with 120 volts. So I can go ahead and use regular electricity like you would with everything else. And then off camera, I don't think this is that important. I'll go ahead and I'll wire this in so that if I ever want to charge my battery bank, I can charge it, you know, like we talked about earlier with the gas powered generator. And now the last thing that we have to do is these wires here. And these are your wires coming in off the solar panels. I'm not a solar guy. You know, I'm learning, but I'm never going to claim to be an authority on this. And if I can install this whole system, you guys, you can do it too. Okay, when I look underneath here, I can see the left side is the positive. So I take the positive feed from the solar panels and I put it in that set screw there, or in that port, and then I tighten up the set screw. And then here's my negative off the solar panels, and I will just feed that through. There we go. Now I got them all. We're up and we're making power right now. So I see that my battery's fully charged. I'm going to go ahead and set this up to all the standards that I want it to have. And yeah, you can see we already got some bright lights that are on inside the cabin, and we've got power. So I'm pretty impressed. If a dummy like me can do this, anybody can do it. So, all right, I'm going to button up a few loose ends, and then I'll give you my closing remarks on this. Okay, it is the morning after we installed the solar. What a trip it was last night. There's gonna be a little bit of a learning curve on this thing. Last night I kind of panicked a little bit because at about 10 o'clock it shut down. So it didn't shut itself down like it broke, but it just shut down like as if the fans just stopped working. So it was completely quiet in the cabin, and that was nice. We were able to enjoy that. On the not so nice side, at 5 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden the alarms went off and the fans fired up and this thing started again. And my wife is laughing in the background, and I quick got up and tried to figure out how to silence it. I guess I should have educated myself a little bit better. There is a way that you can silence it. So it must have a program where it turns itself back on automatically for convenience, and so it's not wearing your batteries down at nighttime when you're not using it. But I'm sure there's going to be a learning curve there. So far, I'm really happy with it. We've ran fans last night and all sorts of things, and charged up our speakers, computers. What's that speaker thing called that we have on the counter there?
A Bluetooth?
Oh, it's a Bluetooth speaker that we like to listen to music to. And you know, that was pretty nice to have. It sounds like a real nice stereo, so that was nice to have that. And cell phones and everything are charged, and we haven't even made a dent in the battery. So this is going to be a huge upgrade compared to the system that we had before. I'm still going to keep my 200-watt system so that I have power in the garage. It's nice to be able to go out to the garage and turn the lights on and enjoy all that stuff. So far, this first night and full day of using it, it's been really exciting. Anyways, guys, it's a really nice setup. I was thrilled to get it. I had done a lot of investigating on what would be the best solar setup to get for the cabin. Really enjoy being able to have the peace and quiet, not to have a generator fired up for when we run our bigger appliances anymore. So it's going to be nice. And I'll give you some follow-up videos on this as well. We brought a microwave oven up. That'll be nice for days when we're working on the cabin and we don't want to have to cook. We can just slide something in the microwave, and now we finally have something that can handle that type of power. So, all right, thank you so much for joining us this week on Carl's Off the Grid. I hope that this helps you out if you're investigating any type of solar setups that you might want for your home or for your cabin, because this is something that's pretty decent. I even thought about getting another one of these to keep down at the house for when the power goes out. At least we'd have something that could provide us with a little bit of energy. And there's nothing better than quiet, clean energy. All right, we'll see you next week on Carl's Off the Grid.